what happened is that we had a product that was useful for some people, people that work remotely or are creative or solopreneurs, and then all of a sudden we had a product that was helpful for almost everybody. So it kind of changed who our customer is, and so that's been really interesting too. We're having different kinds of people come to the cave. CEOs of companies are now coming, and so it's just a really funny and challenging new set of problems.
That's Jeremy Redleaf, co-founder of Caveday, a company that wants to help you stop procrastinating. I'm your host, Patrick McGinnis, and this is FOMO Sapiens, part of the HBR Presents Network. We live in a world of overwhelming options, and whether you're an entrepreneur, an executive, or just someone who wants to make the most out of your time and money, committing to just one thing can feel impossible. That's called FOMO, and it's short for fear of missing out. How do I know? Because I coined the term. Welcome to FOMO Sapiens, the show where I ask entrepreneurial thinkers how they make personal and professional decisions in a world of overwhelming choice. FOMO. FOMO. Did you have any projects that you wanted to get done during quarantine? If you're like a lot of people I talk to, the answer may well be, yes, I did, but I got far less done than I expected. Even if you work tons of hours, and you're working all the time these days, you never manage to get to that one project you promised yourself you'd tackle. It's okay. We're going to change that today. A few weeks back, we talked to Dan Schaubel about creating a cohesive corporate culture in a work-from-home world. I heard from so many of you on the subject that I decided to focus this week's episode on another aspect of work from home that is the mortal enemy of productivity: procrastination. And this is especially true for those of us who work alone or who are working on a project, say a side project if you're a 10% entrepreneur, that requires us to be self-starters and to find our own source of focus and motivation. Without the pressure of a boss or colleagues or an externally imposed deadline, it can be hard to get things done. My guests today are experts on how to get things done when you're working from home. Jake Kahana, Jeremy Redleaf, and Molly Sonsteng are the founders of Caveday, which runs daily deep work sessions that bring people together so that they can work on their own. The sessions are not conducted in an actual cave, but rather a metaphorical one, where Caveday employees oversee a 3.5-hour series of deep work sprints and breaks that are conducted in person or virtually over the internet. They're going to explain how it all works and how all of us can up our productivity and improve our relationship with our work. Plus, Caveday is giving FOMO Sapiens listeners a free virtual session, so stick around to find out how to get yours. You'll also want to stick around for the FOMO moment of the show, where we will continue to talk about productivity, this time for kids. I'll be joined by former CEO of the Princeton Review, Kate Eberle Walker, who came on the show back in season 1. Kate's now running PresenceLearning, a company that's raised over $30 million to help schools to deliver special education remotely. And she actually called me to come on the show. She reached out to say that she's seeing so much FOMO when it comes to homeschooling kids right now that she wanted to come on, tell us about it, and give us some solutions. All right, let's get on with the show. To start our conversation, I asked Caveday co-founder Jeremy Redleaf a kind of inevitable question. Is it fair to say that his entire business model is predicated on getting people to pay him so that they can do their work?
It's true, yeah, but we also pay people to help us work out when we can all do that ourselves as well, right? We started this a few years ago, and it was never intended to be a business. We started as an event, a Caveday, that we made for our friends to inspire them to actually do that book, write that book that they've been talking about writing for 15 years, and we just had all these friends that had side projects, and so we created this experience for them on a Sunday, and we all met through a retreat where we were thinking about how to spend our time well, and I'm a creator, and I was sort of obsessed with how do I get more done, and I couldn't really find a way to focus on my writing. And so we came together, we created this experience called the Caveday, and it was, people said, when are you doing this again? And we said, oh, we're not. This was just like a one-time thing. And so we decided to do it again. And for about a year, we just did it once a month on a Sunday. And then we were fortunate enough to sign a partnership with a company called Breather, who allowed us to kind of do it every week. And so from there, we started, sort of embedding ourselves into the work rhythms of people. And that's where we kind of came to this idea that people could, have what if a workspace actually made you better?
You started doing this, and then you noticed it was an opportunity in the market, and then people were clamoring for this kind of experience, right? And so, Jake, it goes from one thing to be sort of something you do with your friends to actually launching a business. That requires conviction, requires a sense that you can actually make this sustainable. So what convinced you that you could make this a business? And how much do people pay for this?
The first 2 events that we ran, I think the 3 of us looked at each other and we were like, that was really fun. We all made about $200 or whatever it was at the time. And we were like, that was cool. Let's keep doing that. And seeing that people would pay for this, it was a realization that we're onto something really unique. And so at the current moment, we have, I believe it's 14 sessions a week, and people pay $35 a month for unlimited access to our half-day remote sessions.
And to have a business, of course, you need repeat customers. And so, Molly, I'd like to ask you sort of what are the types of people that you see regularly at Caveday? Are there sort of personality archetypes or types of folks that really sort of your program resonates with?
This is really meant for individual work versus more of the collaborative work. But we do see folks from all kinds of industries. There are certainly creative types who are writing a book or working on a screenplay, but we also have folks who are already remote workers and working more traditional 9-to-5 careers, but remotely. And there are contractors and entrepreneurs, and then also folks who are just working on hobbies, or maybe they are there was one woman who worked on her thank you notes for her wedding. So we really do see an interesting range of work being accomplished. But what I really want to point to is that it is more about the individual work versus collaborative.
So, Jake, do you have any favorite stories about the kinds of things that people have done during a cave day?
We've had probably close to 10, maybe even a dozen books written in the cave. We've had people launch companies, start new careers. Several podcasts have come from cave work. Performers who come and write their screenplays and Broadway plays. Lots of journalists come and write articles, not about us, but for their own jobs in the cave.
One guy came and actually focused on cooking a chicken for 3 hours. So you really can do anything in the cave that you can do with focus.
So before quarantine, way back in, I believe, February of 2020, it feels like a million years ago now, I experienced a cave day, and it was quite interesting because it was sort of ritualistic. There's a specific set of activities that take place. It's not that you just show up to a room, everybody's quiet, and you work, which is what I kind of thought it might be. So, Molly, why don't you tell everybody what it's like to go to a cave day and flow of experiences that you offer when you lead a group?
So you're exactly right. Ritual is incredibly important for our method. This is not a typical co-working space, nor is it a library where folks just get together and put their head down and work. And we have, since we started, we have thought through every moment and every touch point that we might be working with the participants. And so to start, we have. We create this container for deep work. I think a lot about a magic circle. So we have to open the circle where the space, the deep work happens, and we come together and we close the circle at the very end. And in between, there are moments where we come together as a group and we see each other and we acknowledge the work that we're doing together in a space. And it's so much less lonely when you are working in a space with other people. And we also want to create a little bit of magic. So it doesn't just feel like, oh, I'm doing this work by myself, this really hard, important work, but we want to have it feel light and magical. So it's not quite so painful. And we collect your phones at the very beginning because the phone is one of the biggest distractions. And simply by taking the phone and making a ritual of it, it feels like, okay, it gives you a sense of relief. And we don't tell the participants how long the sprints are, and that's very intentional. We want the participants to get lost in their work rather than think, oh, there's 2 minutes left. I can switch to something easier. I can open up my email tab or go to social media. But we keep track of the time for you so you can just really dive in and get lost in your work.
I want to ask about the science, because this isn't something that you sort of just dreamed up based on, some hypotheses, right? You actually have some data that backs up the decisions and how you structure the time. So Jake, could you take us through some of the data that inform your decision-making and how it actually affects how you structure the time in the cave?
Our whole method is based on the science of productivity, the research of the psychology and the neuroscience. And so when we talk about the experience itself in the cave, we talk about being in the cave, which is our deep work time, and out of the cave, which is our breaks. And in the cave, our sprint lengths are typically between 40 and 52 minutes. That 52-minute number comes from the a study done by the Drogium group. And basically, they did research on thousands of workers that proved that the workers who were working in about 52 minutes and taking 17, 18-minute breaks afterwards were the most productive, not the people that were working longer hours. There's a study done by the University of California at Irvine who said that when you're working, when you're in focused mode, when you're in that deep flow state, in order to get distracted by something that you didn't intend to get distracted by, right? Like an impulse, you check your phone, you have a coworker coming up to you, talking to you. It actually takes 23 minutes and 15 seconds to get back into that same level of focus. So at the very low end, we're talking by at least 24-minute sprints, but obviously leaning towards the longer end of that. In terms of the breaks and keeping people energized, a lot of our research comes from the book When by Daniel Pink, which talks about the science of circadian rhythms and our own body rhythms in accordance to when we should do our best work.
Molly, other than getting work done, which is obviously a big part of Caveday, what else do you hope that cave dwellers take away from the experience?
Learning to work in this deeply focused, distraction-free way is sort of like training a new muscle. It takes time and practice to gain strength in any muscle, and the more you practice this kind of focus, the more habitual it becomes. Our mission is to improve the quality of life by improving the quality of your work, and I think that's what we really want our cave dwellers to walk away with.
And it's so true, especially if you work for yourself. You could basically never stop working. And so finding a way to turn it on and turn it off. And what you guys do is, and I have this with me because I took it, I guess I was allowed to take it, but if I stole it, I'll give it back someday. You give people this little coaster. It's like a bar coaster that says on one side, I am inside the cave. And on the outside, it says, I am outside the cave. And I keep it on my desk now and I flip it over. At least I try. Sometimes I forget, but I try to bring some of these things back to me. So, we're all doing our best right now, but trying to find a way, especially when you're working from home, to turn off and have work time and non-work time is really important, because otherwise you're just going to work all the time, and that's not healthy either.
Yeah, so we talk about this idea of improving our relationship to work, and it's in contrast to what's out there in the world right now, which is, work harder, hustle harder, I'll sleep when I'm dead. This kind of like, if you're not working harder, then you don't love what you do enough. And that is really damaging to a lot of us who feel like we're working hard, and the rest of the relationships in my life, to other people, to my partner, or my family, or the relationship to myself and taking care of myself, suffer because I quote unquote love my work so much. So what we're trying to do, and we're trying to train people with giving you that coaster, it's not stolen, by the way, is to help people train themselves to feel more accomplished every day in comparison to what they could have done yesterday, but not in comparison to everybody else. It's about feeling more accomplished. It's about being energized by your work. It's about giving and getting in equal balance. And I'm giving my work and my time and energy and effort, and hopefully getting, identity and rest and time off because I've put in that effort. And that relationship is an ongoing thing, right? The more that we work, the more that we have to manage it.
In a sense, it's almost like you guys are running an experiment with a lot of people to see what works best when we're working on our own. And then you're evolving your product to match that. So what have you learned, Jeremy, over time?
We've now done this over 50,000 hours of deep work, and we've over time we've experimented in the cave and track and had people report the results. And so we found, what leads to higher focus scores, and we've just sort of used the cave as an incubator to find a method that works for a lot of people. The first ever Caveday was me by myself. And what I found was that it was really, I got a ton done, but it was so draining. Like I don't think I did anything for the next 2 days. I just couldn't, I was so drained. And so the second cave, we said, what is this experience like if we do it with other people? Where, I'm often energized by other people. And I always find that, I'm better in those kinds of environments. So Molly, Jake, and I did one together, and it was really fun. Like it was productive and fun. What happens with our work is that we we seek, our brains are dopamine seeking machines. We're always seeking that dopamine, that on the web and on social media and with easy tasks. And so if we're going to take away all those things, we still are going to want to seek dopamine. So doing the cave together was like, oh, wow, we could actually like generate oxytocin and dopamine, inside the cave. So like, okay, cool. So this is a social experience. And so for the first year, we did full day caves together, morning, lunch together, afternoon. And again, it was sort of a transformational event. People were having really incredible experiences. And then we started experimenting with sort of half day caves. Like what would a half day cave be, right? What if you could work for a half a day and get all your day's work done? Wouldn't that be cool? So for the next bit of time, we had this half cave day and full cave day, and it was just very complicated. So finally, we decided to just create one time. So a cave is now 3.5 hours, which is sort of like the most you could do without, serving a meal. So the idea is that what if you maximize that morning or afternoon session and got, we're at your peak for that whole time. What would that do to your day?
Now you are moving the experience online. So we are in the middle of quarantine. We cannot leave our homes, but Caveday lives on, and you have made it virtual. And this is not new. You've long had work from home cave days, but now it's your business. So Jeremy, let's talk about how you move from the physical experience of being in a room together where, you take away the phone and lock the door, and people are focusing because they have a sort of a cave guide there who is leading them, to bringing this into a work from home environment.
Yeah, so luckily we've had some practice. We've been doing remote caves for over a year, and we have a community of remote workers all over the globe in about 15 different countries who have helped us figure out how to do this online. It's a very strange feeling. Things are actually going really well for us, and while we're all, of course, dealing with the reality of the situation, but we've seen about 5x growth in the last 2 months, which is incredible, and we have got all these new people in our community, and we've also been able to give some memberships up to out of a scholarship fund we have for people that have lost their jobs. What happened is that we had a product that was useful for some people, people that work remotely or are creative or solopreneurs, and then all of a sudden we had a product that was helpful for almost everybody. So it kind of changed who our customer is, and so that's been really interesting too. We're having different kinds of people come to the cave. CEOs of companies are now coming, and so it's just a really funny and challenging new set of problems.
And you maintain the same structure in terms of the way that you break out the time and the rituals. Is it the same sort of experience?
So I'd say that the structure is definitely the same. We start every cave with a welcome circle and an intention with a theme, and we check in on the work that you're doing. Our 4 work sprints are 3 breaks to keep you energized, and we check out with our wins and accomplishments. That's definitely the same. I think what's different is that those of us who have tried to work out in front of a YouTube video at home know that it's way better than trying to just do a workout by yourself at home. And the same thing happens with work, that me just sitting at my computer, at my desk, at my house can be really challenging. And when I feel like I'm a part of a community that's centered around focus, that's doing work together, that's keeping me accountable for basically half of my day, it's a pretty magical experience. And it's just making the in-person experience even more magical. Unfortunately, we obviously can't run those now, but the remote caves are still a magical experience for so many people.
So one of the things I've learned in quarantine, I think a lot of us have learned in quarantine, is that every business needs to know how to pivot online if this is sustained. And in fact, one of former guests on the show came on a couple weeks back and talked about, this is Naz of Naz Daily, the fact that if you're not online now, you should have been yesterday, and you need to do it immediately. And so as you think about how online plays in your business in the future, and you decide how to structure that mix, where do you think things are going? And this could be, I think for those of us who are listening who may have physical businesses as well, that's going to be important in terms of how we move forward.
Yeah, before the quarantine, we're based in New York City, and we were looking into getting our own permanent space. And now we're asking ourselves, how could you ever sign a lease, right? I think we're going to have to figure out how that even works. How can a business run that risk? And so it's just too early to tell on that. So, but we've always found that the remote is really the most scalable part of our business. And on survey after survey, remote workers, the two biggest problems are the loneliness of working from home and also like the work bleeding into everything. And we think that we have a really compelling solution to that no one else is really doing. So that's where we see the opportunity to help and to be able to serve every country. We can't it probably, especially in this environment, wouldn't be a wise move to sort of franchise and open up WeWork style in every country right now, especially given the state of the world. So we're just focusing on doing what we do in this environment and making it work for more and more people, more and more time zones, and more types of workers.
So Jeremy, it is a business. How big do you think a business like this could get at this point?
Yeah, I mean, we are obviously inspired by a company like Peloton that has really been able to grow to a scale in a work from home environment, and we do think it has the ability to solve that size problem. But that's not really what our focus is. Of course, we're trying to keep the experience feeling human and connected as we grow, because what we do is a very human product. It's not a tech product.
Jake, what have you learned now? You're working from home for 2 months now. We actually tried to tape this show right before quarantine set in, and then we kept on rescheduling it. And eventually now we're doing it remotely. So what have you learned? And do you have advice for folks? Maybe they haven't done Caveday. Maybe they're not going to do Caveday, but they're working from home. What's the advice that you could offer anybody right now who's in a similar situation?
There's probably two things that I would recommend for improving the way that we work. One is to create rituals around starting and ending your day and going inside and outside the cave. So a ritual might be anything from, pretend like you're getting ready for work, right? Take a shower, brew your cup of coffee, and instead of going on your commute, maybe walk around the block or put some headphones on, listen to a podcast, take 5 or 10 minutes to create a mental transition into work. And the same thing at the end of your day out of work. We know people in our Caveday community say at 6 o'clock, they shut their computer and out loud they say done. The other thing is that we often say that we can trick our brains into going into deep work or flow mode. And the way that we do that is by defining our work better, creating a time block, and removing all distractions. So, being clear on what am I doing, defining my work. 2 is saying, I'm going to do that thing. I'm going to monotask on that task for the next, as I mentioned, 25 to 52 minutes. And saying, I'm going to put my phone away. I'm going to close all the other tabs and apps. And I'm just going to do that for that period of time.
And how about you, Jeremy and Molly?
There's a work version of FOMO that I have, and I think a lot of people have, which is someone asks something of me or needs something from me, and that's a great opportunity for me to feel helpful and to feel useful and to keep on my relationship in a good spot. And that is so seductive for me. So one of the big challenges with working from home is being able to turn off those notifications and not get that chance to jump and be helpful and do that other thing. Some people talk about email as, someone else's to-do list. And that goes for every app that's notifying you of something. So how do you play offense? How do you find a time to calm the voices in your head and do the thing that you want to get done in the day before jumping to what else everybody else needs?
I think what's been interesting for me is, as I learned to work from home, I came up with a list of priorities. And if something comes to me and it doesn't fit into those priorities, I get to decide whether or not I want to spend time doing it. So for me, the examples are spending time with my family and showing up and being present for my immediate family. Work is the next priority. The third is showing up for the people in my co-living situation that I'm quarantining with. 4th is rest. And 5 is personal time. So again, if something flies my way and it doesn't fit into one of those categories, then it's an intentional choice to decide if I want to spend time doing that.
And with that, we're going to wrap up the show. And I want to let you know that our friends at Caveday have offered all FOMO Sapiens listeners a free virtual session. So just go to their site, and when you're checking out, you can enter the code FOMO for a free session. So try it out and let me know what you think. You can also find these guys at caveday.org or across the social networks at Caveday. Thanks for being here, Jake, Molly, and Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
FOMO. And now it's time for the FOMO moment of the show, and I'm joined by Eberle Walker, CEO of PresenceLearning, which helps schools provide special education remotely. She is also a mother who is currently homeschooling 2 daughters. I started our conversation by asking Kate what she's seeing right now in the education space.
I am seeing so much stress and so much uncertainty, both from schools who are figuring out on the fly how to remotely educate all of their students, and then from parents who are not sure if what they're getting from their schools is good, if it's right. A lot is being asked of parents to not just supervise, but to engage with their kids and to participate in the education. And it's a lot. So parents are, as they do, they're talking to each other and they're comparing notes and they're trying to figure out, is what I'm getting and what's happening with my kids equal to or better than or worse than what is happening with somebody else's children in another school.
Yeah, so it's competitive, and it's scary because it's not just a couple of weeks here. We're talking about months and months, and potentially who knows how long this will go on. And so what is the impact that this has? I guess you think about, you talk to tons of schools all over the country. How will this affect children?
So I think that the big point which you just made is that it's not just a couple of weeks now, it's continuing, and we don't know how long it's going to continue, and we don't know next year if everyone is going to come back in the same way, or if they do, will there be other ins and outs throughout the year. So I think because of that's what's going to make it actually be okay for students in the long run, because schools have shifted from where they were in March saying, okay, we just need to close for a couple of weeks, or we just need to hang in there for a month and then we'll get back to normal, to really shifting to, we need a program in place that ensures continuity of service, true continuity of education, whether we can be together in the school or whether we need to do this online with flexibility to go back and forth between the two. So that takes time. I mean, you jump into something and it's not going to be great in most places the first week that you do it, and you keep on iterating, you keep on improving. So now a lot of schools are a month into doing this and are, taking the time now to plan for what it'll look like through the summer and into next year. So it's only going to get better and better.
Okay, so this is your job. You literally advise and provide distance learning for schools. So I want to start talking about the advice you can give. Let's start with schools. Say you had a bunch of principals sitting in front of you right now. What's the advice you would give to them about shifting their education online?
So the big advice I would give is to try to do the best that you can. Try to do as much as you can. There's been a whole dialogue out there where some schools are taking the position of, if we can't be sure that every single student can benefit from this service or can receive service at home, then we shouldn't do it for anyone. And then there are other schools who are taking the approach that I would more advocate for, which is, it's not going to be the same as it was when everybody was coming to school, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try, and we shouldn't try to do as much as we possibly can. And it's those schools that are already doing a lot. They have happier parents, they have more engaged students. I think the key piece of advice is, take your time to build a program that works for you, but orient yourself around trying to do as much as you can, not trying to be, careful about doing things that won't work for 100% of your population. There's a real sort of question of equity and access in all of this, that not every child is getting an equal education right now. Because there's big differences in how much technology you have at home, what your internet access is like, and where the parents are and how much can they engage or not engage with the students. So those are very real things that need to be dealt with. But I think that the schools who are dealing with those issues the best way are the ones that are really jumping in and leaning in and trying to do more, not, using that inequity as a reason not to try.
Yeah, it's the old perfect is the enemy of the good, or the FOMO, as I call it. There could be a better solution out there, but you just need to get going. Yes. One last question for you, Kate, on the question of productivity. So not only are you running this business, but you also have 2 daughters at home who you're homeschooling right now. So for all the working parents out there who are juggling these 2 things, what have you learned? What's your advice for them?
My biggest advice is to talk to your school and trust your school. It's not going to be the same as it was when you could drop your children off at school every day and leave them in the caring hands of your principal and your teachers. More is falling on all parents right now, and parents are frustrated by it. They're asking more questions, and they're trying to figure out how to get some relief here. Some of that, we'll all figure out together with schools how to shift balances back and forth. But, more than anything, I just suggest to parents to trust that your schools are doing their best, to work with what they're giving you, and to also know that, kids are very resilient, and they learn from school, but they also learn from experiences, all kinds of experiences. So if nothing else, I just really recommend that parents push their kids to reflect on this time, write in a journal, document the crazy experience of living and learning during a pandemic, and to just think about what it means for them and how it might change their lives next year when they go back to school. So I think there are a lot of ways to learn right now, and I think we all just need to communicate back and forth. I think a child's education has always been a collaboration between the school and the parent, and that the dynamics have shifted in that tremendously right now. But I still think if both sides keep returning to the core of, parents and schools need to work together, everybody will feel a lot better about it as things continue to change.
All right, Kate Eberle Walker, thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me.
FOMO. And that's the end of another episode. If you have an idea, a story, or a question, you can find me on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, and at www.patrickmcginnis.com, where you can also take the official FOMO Sapiens diagnostic and find out if you're a FOMO Sapiens. FOMO Sapiens is part of the HBR Presents Network. Theme music is by Mike McGinnis, and editing and post-production is by Josh Elstro. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it at Spotify and at iTunes. And as always, you can find me at patrickmcginnis.com.